Alright guys, I chose to write my midterm paper on the topic of curbing teenage pregnancy in children as young as middle school. I chose this topic because it's something I don't really have a lot of experience in. I haven't really experienced myself, so I don't know a lot about this topic. And I figured might as well pick this one and I could learn something while I was doing this. My research basically took me to a lot of websites dealing with Health and Human Services, the CDC, those types of resources where I could get hard facts about parts of the country that possibly do already have an effective sex ed program, what's going on in those communities as far as the numbers with teenage pregnancy, and also parts of the country that don't have such a comprehensive view of sex education, and the numbers in that part of the country. This is basically where I got the bulk of my research from, and we'll get into it a little bit further. So let's get a little bit deeper into my subject here. While the topic is teenage pregnancy and how can we curb that in children as young as middle school, while doing my research, I found out that although there already are sex education programs in this country, it varies from state to state, and as well as what each state is allowed to teach. Some states focus on abstinence and some focus on contraceptive. There's very little blending of both. So since each state is different in their sex education programming, my paper calls for a comprehensive nationwide sex education program. There's also three particular areas my program would focus on. First would be realistic birth control and contraceptive information. If these kids are going to make the choice to have sex, then they need to be prepared to be safely doing it. The second point my program would focus on is the preaching of abstinence. Now, abstinence wouldn't be taught as a religious moral, only it would be taught as a choice, and the only foolproof way that you would not get pregnant or contract a sexually transmitted disease. Abstinence needs to be taught that it is a person's choice not to have sex, and that person's choice needs to be respected, whatever it may be. And finally, the third and final point of my paper is going to present the negative side effects of teen pregnancy. If children get an early view at the negative side effects of teen pregnancy and STDs, everything that goes along with that, including the economics of being a single parent, what it takes to live your life with an STD, hopefully some of these children will make an educated guess and an educated stance to stay away from sex. So now let's go a little bit deeper into these topics, and we'll start with the first one, providing basic information about birth control and contraception. In my research, I found that only 20 states currently in the Union provide information about contraception in their sex ed program. Now, I'd like to see this extended to all 50 states to provide a basic information about birth control and contraception. Also, in a recent poll, I found that teens that were polled aged 15 to 19, 43% of them have admitted to having sexual intercourse. Now, further in the poll, 4 out of 5 of these teens did admit to using contraception during their sexual encounter, but less than 1% of those polled used the most effective form of contraception. Furthermore, the federal government started a program called Title IX, which provides supplies and education to low-income clients wanting to extend information about contraception. Now, Title IX has had success. In 2005, contraception use in teens was marked at only 1%, but that's jumped to 7% in 2013. So it shows that teens will listen when provided information. So now that we've explored contraception, let's take a look at my second point, and that is the inclusion of abstinence in a sex ed program. Now, currently in the country, the way sex ed programs are set up is you either preach abstinence or you preach contraception. Now, in my program, in order to achieve a very comprehensive guide to sex education, I believe you need to teach both, and teach both effectively. So currently in the United States, 27 states have a sex ed program where abstinence is stressed. 39 states have a sex ed program where abstinence is included but not stressed, and 12 states have a program where abstinence is not included at all. This has led to the creation of an abstinence teaching guide which labels each state's abstinence inclusion on a level from 0 to 3. I've included in my paper a figure showing the abstinence education level, which is ranked from a 0 to a 3. 0 meaning that there is absolutely no mention of abstinence in your sexual education program, and a 3 meaning that abstinence is stressed and there's hardly any mention of contraception. Now, as you can see, the figures show that the correct amount is a level 2, with a level 3 and a level 0 being both extremes. So to expand on this just a little bit more, we can see that if you go to the level 3, to where abstinence is stressed and contraception is hardly mentioned, you see a much higher rate of teen pregnancy use. On the opposite end of that, if you go down to the level 0, to where there's almost no mention of abstinence and a heavy stress on contraception, you don't see as many pregnancies, but you do see an increase in teenage sexual activity. So if we look at abstinence education in the United States, on the level of a 0 to a 3, where 0 is no mention and 3 is abstinence stressed, I believe the proper amount is right in the middle at a level 2. This blends the amount of abstinence and contraception so that you are informed that if you do want to have sex, you can be safe using this, and if you choose not to, it's okay, and that you should respect your choice. So the final point of my project is presenting young adults with the negative side effects of unsafe sex. This could be anything from a teenage pregnancy to sexually transmitted diseases. And in my research, I've actually found that the American Sexual Health Association calculates that young people aged 15 to 19 account for 40% of all chlamydia cases in the United States. So while 40% is a large number, the ASHA has also found that as many as 1 in 5 young people will also be diagnosed with herpes by the time they reach adulthood. Now, there are a number of different factors in this. Young people are more prone to engage in risky behavior with drugs and alcohol, and also have multiple sex partners and practice unsafe sex. While drugs and alcohol might be a separate issue from sex education, it's the unprotected sex and the engaging in that with multiple partners is what's worrisome and driving up the rates of STDs in teenage pregnancy. Now, if these young adults were presented with these cold, hard facts about what these diseases do to their bodies and what it takes to be a single parent, maybe it would cause some of them to second guess their actions. So that's basically my report, and I believe that creating a nationwide comprehensive sex education program that includes effective birth control and contraceptive information, abstinence inclusion, and presenting negative side effects of STDs and pregnancy to young adults can really have an effect in curbing the teenage pregnancy problem. Now, I'll talk a little bit about where I got my information from and some of the resources that I used. So when I started researching this topic, I knew very little about it, almost next to nothing. So I wanted to find numbers and facts and something I could really sink my teeth into. And my research led me to 2 important websites. First was the CDC, or the Center for Disease Control, and the second was the Department for Health and Human Services in the government. Both had very excellent figures, had excellent information, and I'll get into that here in just a second. So starting with the CDC, this is where I found a lot of my information about contraception and birth control, and also about abstinence, believe it or not. The CDC provided a lot of information on contraception use, use in schools, and use with young adults. I also found a lot of information about abstinence programs through the CDC website. Strangely enough, it turns out that they focus on a lot of sexual health questions and had a lot of great information. So the next source I want to talk about was the Department of Health and Human Services. I got a lot of my statistics from this website. such as the statistics as, 40% of chlamydia cases are made up of young adults aged 15 to 19. They have a lot of great statistics, a lot of great data that you can sink your teeth into and really present your case effectively. If you're looking for data, looking for statistics, the Department of Health and Human Services has it. As far as my other research went, I looked at a lot of abstinence groups. I looked at a lot of nonprofit organizations that provide information about STDs, HIV, teen pregnancy, that sort of thing. And I believe that if we take all of their information and combine it together, the contraception, the abstinence, and the cold hard facts about what's going on, we can truly make an inclusive, comprehensive sex education program. So if you'd like more information about this subject, I'd recommend visiting the CDC's website at cdc.gov or the Department of Health and Human Services website at hhs.gov. And basically, that's my report. I didn't know much about this to begin with. I learned a lot doing this. I had fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. Thank you very much.